this video, I will demonstrate how to create an evenly stepped value scale and also how to create an observational painting using planar shapes of value. To create our value scale, we will use raw umber and titanium white and a bristle brush. Always choose the brush size closest to the shape you're painting. I'll be using the number 10 flat brush since it's just smaller than the boxes I'll be painting. Wet your brush and then wipe most of the water off with a paper towel or rag so that it's only a bit damp. To start your value scale, begin by painting in the first box white. This will ensure that the white remains bright without any raw umber mixing in. Make sure your brush is fully loaded on both sides and has a nice even amount of paint on it. When applying, make sure the paint is opaque so that you cannot see the paper through it. If you can, you have too much water. If the paint feels tacky and isn't going on smoothly, mix in a very small touch of water so that it applies smoothly like soft butter. Then move on to value number 2, which will be a very light value. Mix in a very small amount of raw umber into your last mixture. To achieve a nice even value, mix the paint thoroughly, including all the paint already on your brush. You don't want to see streaks of different colors when you're applying. Try to move quickly and use the least amount of brush marks possible, avoiding going back and forth numerous times. It's important to practice speed when painting since it dries very quickly. Then move on to value number 3, adding more raw umber to your last mixture. Always leave a bit of your previous mixture untouched so that you can go back to it if needed. Keep an eye on your mixtures, trying to make each step go darker and darker at the same rate. You want to avoid any sudden jumps in darkness or lightness. If it's too light when you apply, go back and add some more raw umber to the mixture. Then keep moving to values number 4 and 5. We're looking for an evenly stepped value scale. If you see any of those sudden jumps in value, go back and make the adjustments as you go. Know that you won't achieve this on the first try. It takes some adjusting later on and also while you're doing it. You can see here that once I put in value 5, it became clear that I didn't get dark quick enough. I then had to go back and start adjusting each previous value. Notice that before I put my brush in the water, I always wipe the paint off with a paper towel. This is so that the water stays fairly clean and doesn't need to be changed every few minutes. Your last value should be value 6, straight raw umber with no white added. Once you have this value, you can make further adjustments as needed to the rest of the value scale. If you start to get too much paint on your value scale, it'll start getting muddy looking and it becomes hard to control your values. If that's the case, just let it all dry and then work back on top of it. Keep in mind that when acrylic paint dries, it always looks a little darker than when it's wet. When you're done, wipe your brush and then put it in your water. Never leave a brush out of water when you're not actively using it. If acrylic paint dries on your brushes, it will ruin them and you'll need to replace them. Now that the value scale is complete, we're ready to move on to our first planar value exercise. Set up a still life with 2 to 3 objects with a strong light source shining on it from one direction. Have your acrylic pad set up on your easel. Don't remove the paper from the pad until the painting is complete and dry. If your palette is still wet, wipe it off so that you have a fresh area to work. We will begin by first toning the entire page with the large number 12 flat bristle brush. Toning means to create a wash that you cover the entire surface with so that it has a nice mid-tone value all over it. To do this, take a small amount of your raw umber and mix in a lot of water into it so that it's very transparent. Cover the entire surface with this wash to achieve a fairly even, light mid-tone value. Then use this same wash in your small number 4 round brush to begin your line drawing. Zoom into your objects so that they take up most of the page, avoiding large negative spaces. This drawing will get completely covered up, so don't devote too much time to it. Don't worry about erasing mistakes, just correct them as you go with a bit darker wash. You want these preliminary drawings to only take about 2 to 3 minutes. Draw the outer contours of each object first, then draw in the large shapes of shadow that you see. I usually put in the cast shadows first, that you see on the tabletop and also the box here. When doing so, pay careful attention at where each of these shadows intersect with each of your objects. Make sure they do that in your drawing. Then move to your objects and draw in any large shapes of shadow that you see. Take a look at the sphere and how there is a light shape and a dark shape. These shapes are always different, and they don't just cut your object in half. The shape is always a bit strange and uneven. Getting an accurate shape helps describe both the volume of your object and the light source. Make any corrections needed to your drawing, and then it's time to start your planar painting. Wipe the wash off your palette and grab your number 10 flat brush. We will use two values to start with, values number 2 and number 6 on your value scale, very light and very dark. This means that every shape in your still life will need to be painted one of these two values. Start with your light shapes. Mix up a decent amount of your light value so that it stays wet and can go a long way. Look at your still life one shape at a time. Find a light shape and paint it in. Move from object to object, painting in the lightest shapes on each of those objects, including the tabletop and the wall. Remember that all outlines of your drawing must disappear, so paint right over your lines when painting in the shapes. Keep looking at your still life and make any corrections to your shapes as you go. Once you have the light shapes painted in, wipe your brush, rinse it in the water, wipe it again, and then start painting in your dark shapes with straight raw umber, your value number 6. When painting in each dark shape, paint right to the edge of your light shapes, even overlapping them at times. Don't have any space between the light and dark shapes. Because we're only using two values, often two dark or two light shapes will touch. You can help differentiate between the two shapes by changing the direction of your brush stroke, and also by using thicker paint on one shape than the one it's touching. If your brush is too large for a particular shape, grab your number 6 filbert brush to get in those tight places. Remember, always use the brush closest in size to the shape you're painting. When painting in the negative space, the space around your objects, choose the value that's going to help make your objects stand out. Since the top of my sphere is light, I'm going to keep the negative space dark. Painting in negative spaces also gives you the opportunity to carve out your positive shapes with the brush and make final corrections to that shape, as I've done here with the sphere. Once you're done painting in all of your shapes, go back in and correct any errors that you see. Paint in any little spots that didn't get covered, and make sure you have nice hard edges between each shape and that the paint never mixes on the painting. Each shape should consist of one even value.